Hey, thanks for clicking on my video. Seb Heslo here. And you know when you watch those other big mining YouTubers like Altered Component and Red Panda Mining, and they're building their mining rigs and they got like 8 or 12 of the exact same card? Well, guess what? Chump Change XD, if that is even your real name. I can be a cool mining YouTuber too that gets multiples of the same version of the same graphics card. So take that. Now, obviously I'm just joking around, having a little bit of fun, but I am so excited right now. I got these. So these are 3 of the same GTX 1660 Super. And while we're going to build out a proper big 14 GPU rig very soon here on the channel, so you can subscribe so you don't miss that, I thought, you know, it would be a waste to just let these cards sit here on the table and not mine with them. So what we're gonna do today is we're gonna build a little 3 GPU mining rig from start to finish, using some of the parts that we will then use in our big 14 GPU rig. So first of all, we do have our 9 GPU rig going right now, and it's been mining pretty well for over a day now. You know, fingers crossed, I don't want to jinx it. We still haven't properly figured out what is the problem with it, but if you want to know more about this rig, I got a video about that, and you can see the link in the description for that, I guess. But that's enough waffling. Let's build a little 3 GPU rig. So in preparation for this, we put together this just little temporary open wood frame kind of situation here. So as you know, this is not going to be a permanent rig by any means. It's just going to be a little somewhere we can put cards until they get a proper big rig to go into. But yeah, so to start, I figured I would just round up all of the components that we're gonna be putting into the rig today, and I'll be right back. Alright guys, so this is all of our components here on the table now, and I figured I would just go through a little bit what we got here. So just keep in mind, first of all, like, all of this is like super overkill for a 3 GPU mining rig. The reason why we got all of this like stuff is because we're gonna put it together into a 14 GPU mining rig soon. So, but anyway, we got the ASRock H110 Pro BTC Plus motherboard. We've got a 1200 watt Zalman ATX power supply. We've got the 3 EVGA GTX 1660 Supers that you've already seen. Got some sort of Celeron processor, 8 gigs of RAM, a gigabyte SSD with 120 gigs on it, I think. And then we got these, which are like the new version 9 risers. I don't know, they're cool. They're black and they're red and cool. So what I figured I'd try is I'm gonna do one of those Red Panda mining snaps and everything will just be unboxed. So let's try it, guys, okay? 3, 2, 1. Oh, it doesn't work. Well, I guess I'll just have to do it manually then. Alright, I'll see you back soon. Alright, so I got everything open and unboxed now. Seriously though, I don't know how Red Panda does it. It looks so easy when he does it. I don't know, maybe you have to be Canadian. But yeah guys, look at how cool these cards are. I've never seen like 3 graphics cards the same in real life before, and also like check these risers out, they're so cool. Like with the black and like this is almost like gold. Really cool. Alright, I know, that's enough of me thinking the components look cool. Let's get to actually putting it together, and I can hear you through the comments already. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put you guys down on the table with me and we'll just put it together. Alright, so let's get to building a mining rig, huh? So the first thing I'll do is I'll just sort of set our motherboard into place here. Now, since this isn't gonna be any like permanent sort of rig going on here. The motherboard will obviously need to come out again in just a couple of days, so I'm just gonna sit it down here on the little foam for now and just call that done. And then I figured I would attach this power supply with very high-tech, what are these called? Zip ties they're called. So I'm just gonna daisy chain them first, I think, like so. And then our power supply will be sitting right here, this way. And I very much doubt we're gonna need all of these cables today, but I should have plugged them out before we started, really. Well, too late now. Actually, I think I'm gonna need to stand up for this. So we're getting the boring, like sitting things down with zip tie things out the way first, so that we got all of the fun stuff saved for last. Let's make our lives easier and just put that to the side. Push this through. There we go, very high tech and proper. So I figured what I'll do next is, alright, so I figure I'll start with putting the CPU into the motherboard. So I'm just gonna make some room for myself. I'll get the motherboard back out immediately. So with putting a CPU into a motherboard, what you gotta do is just, well, first of all, get the CPU out. And what you want to be looking for on your CPU is, I don't know how well you'll be able to see this. I'll put a picture up, I think, but like in one of the corners, there's a little arrow. And you have to look for that same arrow on your motherboard, and those corners need to be lined up. So what you do is open up the little clasp like this. And then you can let the plastic cover stay, that's totally fine. Get your CPU out and then just make sure you line those two little arrows up and just drop your CPU in, and it should just sit in no problem on its own. And then you just clamp it in place like that, and the little plastic cover pops out of its own. And then we cannot forget the CPU fan. So as you can see here, there is already a little bit of thermal paste on the fan as it came in the box. If yours doesn't have that, you just need to apply a little pea-sized blob of thermal paste on your CPU, and then we just put our CPU fan on top. So what I always do is I find where the CPU fan plug is, and then I try to line that up with the cable, so that the cable don't have to travel all across the board to reach the outlet for the fan. So I figure around here should be good. And these fans, they just kind of snap in place. So you line it up like so, and then just grab it with both hands, and on the diagonal you just press it in like this. And that's that. And plug the little fan cable in like so. Then we got our RAM, and I'm gonna have to check in the manual now, because when you only have one stick of RAM, there's usually a preferred slot. So I mean, I'd be very surprised if it wasn't this first one that's labeled A1 rather than B1, but better safe than sorry, right? Alright, so let's plug the RAM in. Alright, so that is our RAM installed, our CPU installed. I guess now we'll just sit the motherboard back here, and I'll plug it all into power. Oh, actually, let's plug the SSD in while we're at it. Alright, now we can set the motherboard back in its place. So, and I'm just gonna drag the rig over here a little bit, and let's find the cables that we need to plug in. So the very first thing we need is our 24-pin motherboard cable, which plugs in way back here. You know what I'll do? I'll pull the motherboard out and I'll plug the cable in, and then I'll just push it back in again. There we go. Then we need the CPU cord, which is this one. All right. Alright, there we are. Alright, so now I'm just gonna plug the SSD in to both the SATA on the motherboard and into power. And then I figured let's get a screen out and see if we can get this guy to post. You know, I always think it's a good idea to see if the computer can actually post before you start plugging your GPUs in. And, you know, install your operating system and, you know, little details like that. Alright, so SSD is plugged in. Now it just needs power. And I know there is a SATA cable here somewhere. Like this one should be alright, shouldn't it?
This is the end of side one of this record. Please
there we go.
second side.
Oh my, this motherboard does not have HDMI. I will have to go get a DVI plug, you guys. I got one now. So, look at this. No HDMI. Had to wait a whole day just to buy a little adapter like this. But we got it. So let me put you guys back down where you were yesterday. And let me plug this little adapter in. Alright, now let's plug the HDMI in finally. Like so. Alright, so I plugged the HDMI into the motherboard and the screen. I double checked that our motherboard cable was plugged in, our CPU cable was plugged in, that our SSD was plugged into both the SATA data connection on the motherboard as well as to power from our power supply. And I made sure all of the power cords were plugged into everything, so I think we should be able to power this guy up. This is so exciting and nerve-wracking at the same time, powering up a rig for the first time. So we obviously don't have any operating system installed anywhere, so we're just gonna get to the BIOS, but that's totally fine by me. I've got the keyboard plugged in, and my motherboard actually has a little power switch on the motherboard as well, so I don't need to plug in an external power button. So yeah, let's give it a whirl. Alright, CPU fan started spinning, so that's a good sign. Okay, I mean, this is a good sign. Reboot and select proper boot device, or insert boot media in selected boot device and press a key. Yeah, I mean, that is totally fine. That is what I expect to see. So let's see if I can reset the board and get into our BIOS. It's probably delete or escape button. Hey, and we're in the BIOS. Look at this, guys. Okay, that is really good. I'm really happy with this now. Can you see on the screen there? Yeah, you can see. I mean, you can't see much what's going on maybe, but you can see that we got something going on. So I'm in the BIOS right now, and I think before I do anything else, I'll just have a little look at the BIOS settings, and I'll go through that together with you guys. So there isn't that much you need to go and change in your BIOS for mining, but there are a couple of little... so the first setting that you should look to change is you want to select for the computer to default to using its onboard graphics as the display output, rather than trying to display out through one of your GPUs. So you should look for a setting that looks something like this, which says primary graphics adapter, and then I'm just going to change that from PCIe 2 to onboard. And then what you can do is also change your PCIe link speeds. So it's currently set to auto, and what most people recommend is try Gen 2 first, and if that's giving you issues, then select it down to Gen 1 again. So I'm just going to set Gen 2 for all of these, like such. And then you might want to select this setting, which is restore on AC power loss. So what that does is, if you cut the power, like if you have a power outage for example, and then power comes back, the computer will power back up on its own. So just restore on AC power loss. I've set that to power on. Alright, and so the final setting that you want to look for is this above 4G, and usually it's labeled as above 4G decoding, and it should be enabled. And for some reason it's called above 4G MMIO BIOS assignment here, so I don't know why it's called that, but let's move on. But I think that should be it for our BIOS settings. So I'm just gonna say save changes and exit, and that should be that. Alrighty, so now what we're gonna do is, I have a USB drive here with Windows, like this is like a Windows installer USB drive. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna plug this into the motherboard, and then we'll reboot, and what should happen is it will just start to install Windows 10 on my SSD for me. And you can just make one of these on your own. There's like, I don't know, you know about computers, just Google like Windows install USB, and I'm sure there'll be a guide about how to make one. And then I'm gonna plug the USB stick into one of my USB 3 ports, and let's turn our motherboard on again. Like that. Oh, I saw a Windows logo for a second. Not very much is happening. It might be that I need to tell it to boot from the Windows USB key. So I'm going to power this off. Alright, so it's F11 to open up the boot menu. So I am gonna restart, and I'm just gonna spam F11. Here we are. Let's try the second partition. Well, this ain't right, is it? I'm not sure what to do here, guys. I'm gonna have to stop the recording and do some Googling, I think. Okay, so I'm back, and I wouldn't say I've figured it out. It's been like 2.5 hours. I tried the different USB ports. I tried re-downloading Windows onto my USB drive. I tried, I don't know, anything I could think of, and let me just show you how I solved this issue. So I'm gonna start up the motherboard, and I'm gonna press F11 here on my keyboard to get into the boot menu. There we are. Let me just untangle myself here real quick. Right, and I'm gonna select the USB drive with Windows on it. And we get to here, and then this happens, right? And then you think, what is the solution? Well, let me tell you what the solution is. Patience. So like what I have to do now is just leave this here for a couple of minutes, and it will sort itself out. So let's just wait it out together. I'm gonna answer some text messages or something. And there we are. Isn't that just like, it's frustrating, but also it makes you happy because like, oh, I guess nothing was really wrong then. But alright, so now we can get on with installing Windows. So let's just see, this is all fine. Select language and stuff. Install now, sure. And I think I can just click, I don't have a product key. Yes, so here is the screen where we get to select which version of the Windows 10 operating system we want to select. And I'm gonna go with Windows 10 Pro N, which the N version is basically just kind of a stripped back version of Windows that doesn't have like the Windows Media Player and all of like the bloatware that comes with Windows. So I'm gonna select that, hit next, and I'm gonna accept this license agreement that I've absolutely read. And I'm gonna select this, which is custom install Windows only, which is because I have a blank SSD, so I want to do a clean install of Windows. And I'm gonna select this, which is my SSD drive, hit next. And I guess now we'll just have to wait for a long time for Windows to install. So I'm gonna pause the camera now, and I'll meet you back here once this has moved along a little bit. Alright, so Windows finished installing and the computer restarted a couple of times, and we're now into the Windows setup. So let's start with region, and I'm just gonna say United States because I don't really think it matters, to be honest with you. That is not the right keyboard layout though, so I'm just gonna select the one that I have. I don't want to add a second keyboard layout. And here's what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna select, because it wants to connect to the internet, but I'm gonna say I don't have internet here. And it's going to complain and try to make me connect to the internet, but I'm gonna say continue with limited setup. And then I'm gonna select a name for the computer. I'm just gonna say admin. And I'm not gonna have any password. And then you just turn all of this stuff off, because all of this stuff just uses processing power that we don't want to be wasting. There we go. I don't want Cortana. Hi. So while it thinks about that, there was something I forgot to mention earlier, which is like when you're in your BIOS, a lot of the times what you might want to do is actually update the sort of BIOS version. And you know, I just skipped doing that now because this is gonna be such a temporary rig, and while I put this motherboard into like a proper rig, I'm gonna update because I know that this motherboard actually has a mining specific BIOS version that you can install on it. So of course I'm gonna download and install that while I put this into a proper rig. But as for now, I didn't want to waste time on doing that, to be honest with you. I wanted to get this up and running. Oh, and Windows is almost there, just as I said that, so look at that. We have a working computer. Yeah, Windows Edge, I'm gonna say maybe later, and that's a hard maybe for you. Other than that, what I usually do when I first get a clean install of Windows is I just press the little start icon down here, and I just go through this list, and I just right click everything that I don't want. So for example, we got 3D viewer, and I just click uninstall, uninstall. Alarms and clock, can't remove that. So anyway, I'm just gonna go through and right click and uninstall everything I can that I don't need basically. And I'll see you when I'm done with that. Alright, so now that that's done, there are a few settings within Windows itself that we need to set. So I'm just gonna go through all of those now, so stick around. You know what, actually, before we get to the Windows settings, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna just update Windows first. So I'm sure you know how to do this, but just hit little settings down here and then go update and security, check for updates. And of course it helps if you actually have internet plugged in to do that. So I'm just gonna plug into internet and I'll be right back. So we have our Ethernet cable plugged in and Windows is checking for updates. Right, so what's gonna happen now is Windows is gonna go through and update itself, and it might need a restart or two. So I'm just gonna let it do that, and I'll meet you guys back when that's done. Alright, so I realized that while this is going, I can install something else. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna download and install MSI Afterburner while we're waiting for this anyway. So I'm just gonna search for MSI Afterburner. And if you don't know, MSI Afterburner is the software for overclocking our GPUs to make them work harder and get us more crypto. So here we go, msi.com/landing/afterburner. And this looks like the web page. I'm gonna click download Afterburner. And that's downloading the zip file now. Show in folder, right click, extract all. This is fine. Okay, so here we go. And this is the setup. Yep. Next. I accept. I don't want this thing. And we're gonna install Afterburner. Now we're also gonna have to install our Nvidia display drivers as well as our actual mining software. But I'm gonna do that once we're done setting up the rest of Windows. I just figured I could install MSI Afterburner now while we're waiting on the Windows updates anyway. And I might as well eject and remove the little USB key with the Windows install on it. Because we don't need that anymore because we have Windows. Alright, so Windows is done updating and now we're gonna finish setting up Windows for mining. So the very first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna go here into our little search bar and we're gonna type in run, and we're gonna open up this little run app, and then we're gonna type in here services.msc. Alright, so you want to find Windows Update in this list. And you're going to right click and hit stop if it's running. And then we're going to right click it again, hit properties. And then under startup type, we're going to change that to disabled. Hit apply, then OK. And then close out of this. Right, so now we're going to set the computer up for best performance. So what we're gonna do is in the little search box again, we're gonna type in this PC, and we're gonna right click and we're gonna go properties, and then on the right side here we're gonna go advanced system settings, and then here under performance we're gonna hit settings, and then we're gonna change that to adjust for best performance, and we're gonna hit apply, and then we're gonna go in here to advanced, And here under virtual memory, we're gonna hit the change button, and we're gonna uncheck automatically manage paging file size for all drives. So uncheck that, and then we're gonna select a custom size here. And so what people usually say is enter the size here that is the total of all of your GPUs. So I have 3 1660 Supers that are going into this machine, and each of these 1660 Supers have 6 gigs of internal memory. So 6 times 3 is 18, that's 18 gigabytes, so that's 18,000 megabytes. And I enter that into both initial size and maximum size. And then I hit set, I hit OK, and I hit OK again, and OK again. Alright, so while we're in here in our system settings, we can go down and we can hit power and sleep in the menu on the left hand side. And then we can select here under screen, when plugged in, turn off after, and we're gonna say never. And the same thing here under sleep, we're gonna select never as well. And then out here on the right hand side, we have additional power settings. And so it normally just gives you the choice of balanced or power saver. However, there's a little show additional plans down here that you can click, and then you get high performance. And so we're gonna select high performance. All right, so there is one more settings in here, but we got our high performance, and we need to click change plan settings. And here again, it says to turn the display off after 15 minutes. So we're gonna select never again here and put the computer sleep never. And then we're gonna hit change advanced power settings. And then we're gonna scroll down to PCI Express, open that up, find link state power management, open that up, and just make sure that that's set to off. And hit OK, and save changes. And that should be it for our Windows settings. Alright, so now that we've finished setting up Windows for mining, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna turn the computer off, and I'm gonna plug in the first GPU. So let's do it. Okay, so we got the computer turned off now, and the very first thing that I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna switch the power supply off. There we go. So with this motherboard, we've actually have 2 Molex connectors and a SATA connector that powers the PCIe Express ports on the actual motherboard. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna plug in 2 Molex connectors and 1 SATA connector into my power supply, and then into the motherboard itself. And then we'll move on to plugging in our GPUs. Alright, so we got 2 Molex and a SATA. So I think I'm gonna start with the SATA connector. That goes into the power supply, and then it goes onto the motherboard. Alright, that seems to be on there. Now we're gonna move on to our first Molex cable. And our second Molex cable. Let's double check everything is in properly. Seems like it. Alright, so let's plug some GPUs in. So what I always recommend doing is start by just plugging one GPU in, and then start your computer up to make sure everything works. Add the next GPU, do the same process again, add your next one, and so on. So let's just do that, shall we? So got the first 1660 Super here, and got the riser. So let me just grab some PCIe cables. Right, got 2 PCIe cables here that I'm gonna plug into the PSU. Alright, and that's because we need 1 for the riser and 1 for the card itself. So I always plug in the 6-pin to the riser before the card, because that's easier. Like that. And then open the little clasp. Add our card onto the riser, close the clasp. There we go. Plug the 8-pin power into the GPU. There we go. Now I'm just gonna sit this here for a second while I get my little screwdriver, so just bear with me for a second. Alright, so I'm just gonna attach the card here. Alright, that's in. Now I'm gonna plug in the little like PCIe ×1 adapter into the motherboard and then plug the USB cable from that into the riser. So let me just find which is the first PCIe slot, and I believe it's the black ones first and then the white ones. Okay, and then let's just double check everything. We got this plugged in, this plugged in, this plugged in here. Got our power cords connected. Yeah, that should be all good. Okay, so now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna switch the power back on the PSU. And what's going to happen then is the system is going to start up because, you know, we set in our BIOS that the computer should start up as soon as it gets power. So what I'm going to look for then immediately is if the fans start spinning on the card, or if at least the little like LED on the riser lights up, just to see that it's sort of alive in some way. So here we go, 3, 2, 1. And there we go, fans are spinning on the card. Yeah, and there's a little LED going on the riser itself. 2 actually, 1 red, 1 green. And we got something moving on our screen, which is great. Alright, so we're in Windows, and what I always do right away is I type in Device Manager. Open that up. And then you should find under Display Adapters, your card should show up eventually. But it's probably gonna be here under other devices for a while. Alright, so I totally forgot that we haven't installed the like Nvidia drivers yet. So I'm just gonna open up Microsoft Edge, and then I'm just gonna search for Nvidia, and we're gonna go to the official Nvidia website. We're gonna click up on the right on drivers, and we're just gonna select our card and our operating system, and I'm gonna go with Studio Driver and hit download and hit download again. Alright, and that is done downloading, so I'm just gonna run the Nvidia installer. Yeah, so I'm gonna go Nvidia graphics driver and G for experience, just because really. Hit agree and continue, and then I'm gonna go custom installation actually. I'm gonna hit next, and I'm gonna uncheck the HD audio driver, the PhysX system software, and the USB-C driver. And then I'm also gonna check this perform a clean install. And what that does is if there are any like old display drivers on there, it attempts at least to uninstall those first before it installs these new drivers. And the reason I'm doing this is because it's a new system anyway, so if there happens to be like some little thing that Windows Update might have tried to install or something, it will just get rid of that. At least that's the theory. Alright, we're preparing for install right now, and I think then it will just go through the sort of installation bar, and then it will want to reboot the system once, and as it's done that, we should have our card up and running. Alright, and the card actually just showed up in our device manager now. As you can see, everything's kind of jumping around a little bit as it's installing things. But yeah, I mean, that is of course a really good sign. And here we go now. So let's see what it's saying now. It has finished. And sure, it can create a desktop shortcut for GeForce Experience, whatever. And it wants to launch Nvidia GeForce Experience. Nah, I'm not going to do that now. Let's close. And what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to give the computer a quick reboot, just to make sure everything works fine with this new driver, and then I'll power the system back down again, and we'll plug in the next 1660 Super and make sure that works, turn the system back off again, plug in the third one, make sure that that works, and then we'll get our mining going. Alright, so I'm just gonna open up our device manager again, make sure that we find our 1660 Super under display adapters, and we do. There it is. Fantastic. Actually, just because I'm curious, I'm also gonna open up our MSI Afterburner now, because I want to see if the card shows up in there as well. But the very first thing we need to do when we open up Afterburner is we need to change to the correct skin, which the correct skin is the MSI Cyborg Afterburner skin red. This is the one you want. This is the one. And here we can see our GeForce GTX 1660 Super is in there. Beautiful. I'm gonna close that. I am going to shut down the computer. I'm gonna install the second graphics card, just like I showed you how I installed the first one. I'm gonna fire it up and I'll meet you then. Alright, so our second GPU is in, and I know I said it already, but look how cool these risers are. Like, with the green and red, it just looks so cool. Like, I don't know, maybe I'm just a nerd, you guys. Alright, so let's see if Windows recognizes our second GPU. So I'm gonna go into Device Manager and open up display adapters, and there it is. We got two GTX 1660 Supers there now. Fantastic. And we're just gonna repeat the process one more time. So shut down, and then once that's shut down, turn the power supply off, plug in our GPU, turn it back on, and then we're gonna start mining. Alright guys, check this out. 3 1660 Supers, all the same, sitting in this little rig, this little overkill rig. And I figured let's turn power supply on together. So 3, 2, 1, let's go. Alright, everything's firing up okay. Fans are spinning on all 3 GPUs. Got the cool LEDs shining on all the risers. Got our little AS Rock logo on the screen. Alright, and I'm gonna put you guys down. And here we got Windows going as well. Alright, so let's start by running our device manager. And let's see what we got here under display adapters. Okay, so we got 2 of the 16 Supers showing up so far. But I'm not too worried yet, because it might just take a while for the third one to show up. It's thinking about something. And there it is. 3 1660 Supers. All showed up in our device manager. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna download our miner first of all. So open up good old Microsoft Edge again, and I'm gonna be using T-Rex miner. So I'm just gonna type T-Rex miner into Bing. But that's okay, because it gets the job done. And here it is, the official GitHub. And I am going to download the latest Windows version here, the zip, and there that is. I'm gonna open the folder. I'm gonna right click it and extract all. And there's our miner extracted. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do one more reboot before we actually fire up the miner. And that is just because I want like one nice clean reboot where it recognized all 3 GPUs like right from the startup. So I'm just gonna hit power, restart, and then we'll take it from there. All right, and let's open our device manager first off. And there we go. 3 1660 Supers all plugged in and ready. So I guess now what we gotta do is just start mining. So I'm gonna open up the downloaded and extracted T-Rex folder. And here you got your choice of presets for both different coins and different pools to use. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use the preset for mining Ethereum to Ethermine. So I'm just gonna find that batch file. I'm gonna right click on it. I'm gonna select run as administrator. And then Windows is gonna say that it doesn't want me to open this file. But then I'm gonna click more info. And I'm gonna click run anyway. And then I'm gonna click yes. So never mind running it as an administrator. I'm just gonna run it normally by right clicking and going open. Alright, so our miner has recognized all 3 of our EVGA 1660 Supers, which is fantastic. It's creating the DAG files. And we're mining, guys. So right now we're getting 62.5 megahash a second, and keep in mind that is without having overclocked the cards at all. They are just running at stock clocks right now. So I figured before we get into overclocking and bumping up our mega hash, you know, bumping up our hash rate, what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna walk you through a little bit about like how to set up the pool and stuff like that. So I'm gonna close down our miner by selecting Control C. And then it says that it's shutting down T-Rex, and then it's asking if I want to terminate the batch job. So I'm just going to hit Y for yes and enter. Now, what we need to do first of all is we of course need an Ethereum wallet address. That's not something I'm going to go over how to do in this video. There are multiple videos about that already that you can just search up, and I'm sure you'll find a great video by someone like Altered Component or, you know, any of the good big mining YouTubers. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna say like select the pool you want to mine to. So for me that's gonna be Ethermine. So then I'm gonna open up my browser and I'm gonna search for Ethermine, and there it is, ethermine.org. And then for most mining pools like this, you'll see a little button that says something like start mining or how to mine with us or something like that. And it's gonna give you, first of all, a choice of your mining server. So what you wanna do is you wanna select the server that is closest to you. So for me, that's gonna be the European server. So that is eu1.ethermine.org. So I'm just gonna right click and copy that. I'm gonna open up the folder for my miner. I'm gonna right click on the batch file with the template for mining Ethereum to Ethermine, and I'm gonna hit edit instead of open. So in here is where we do our settings for, you know, setting up the miner to mine the way we want it to. And I'm just gonna check that my camera is still recording, and it was, so that's good. And in here what you're gonna see is it's gonna say T-Rex blah blah blah, and then you have this little string that says stratum plus TCP : / and then you have the address to your mining server. So as you can see here, or maybe you can't, I don't know, maybe the screen is real small for you guys, but it's already saying eu1.ethermine.org here. So I actually don't have to copy that in, but if I was, for example, in US East, I would copy in this address to this mining server instead here, and then After that is the wallet address. So you need to change this out from being the developer's wallet address to being your own wallet address. And then you got just, if the pool needs a password, that password goes here after the little -p, and where there's just an X now. And if the pool does not require a password, just leave the X there. And then you got another -w, and after that is the name of your rig that you wanted to show up. So I'm just gonna call this 3x1660 Super. And then I'm just gonna hit the top right X, and I'm gonna go save. I'm going to close the browser. And now I'm gonna open the batch file again and start mining. And as the miner is running, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set my overclock settings for these cards. So to do that, I need to open up MSI Afterburner. There we go. And if you want to see more in-depth videos about how to overclock with MSI Afterburner, I have plenty of videos on my channel about overclocking different cards in this software, and you can just follow along and take the same steps as I do. But for these cards, I'm just gonna wait to get our miner up and running first, and then I'm just gonna apply some settings and see how we get on. But one thing I can do right off the bat is just change the fan speeds. So I'm gonna put 80% on these GPUs, and that seems fine. I'm gonna open the settings for MSI Afterburner. I'm gonna, under general properties, select start with Windows and start minimized. And that's just gonna make sure that MSI Afterburner opens up right away when you start Windows. And what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna slam the memory clock all the way down and see what megahash that gets us, because with these 1660 Supers, and they have the Hynix memory in it, like Hynix is the brand that makes the little memory chips on them. For some reason, they perform a lot better by having the memory clock pulled all the way down rather than having it be pulled up like you normally do when you overclock. Yeah, and as we can see here, our hash rate has already increased from 62.5 megahash a second total to almost 80 megahash a second now, but I'm pretty sure it's still climbing because I'm expecting to get above 90 megahash. Yeah, and there it is. We are at 93.81 megahash a second now, which is really good. I think I'm also gonna just experiment a little bit with my settings for these cards. I'm gonna pull the core clock as well as the power limit both all the way down and apply that. And I'm just gonna see what that gets us on this rig here. All right, so our hash rate seemed to have stabilized at around just around 93 megahash, I would say, which really good for these cards. I believe that's the end of this video. We're up, we're mining. Let's have one last look at the rig, shall we? Yeah. Check this out, guys. 3 identical 1660 Supers, all mining. And never mind the cables. I know I need to do some cable management here, right? We're not gonna have a nest of snakes here, I promise. But I think that's gonna be it for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and if you wouldn't mind giving the video one of these, I'd really appreciate it. As well as subscribe to the channel for more mining content coming up really soon. Until then, thanks for watching. See you in the next one. Goodbye. Bye-bye. Alright, so I figured I'd do a little bonus clip here at the end. Just showing you what the rig looks like now that I did a little bit of cable management. And I got it set up here. I also messed with my overclocking settings just a little bit. And we're getting about, what's it say 95.4 mega hash roughly. And if I just turn the display off here, we can see we're pulling just above 300 watts on the wall. So that is for the whole system. Not too shabby indeed.